Can I advise the member, under Speaker's Rulings 25(2), you must call. I cannot anticipate what you're going to say.
Mr Speaker.
I call the honourable member Eugenie Sage.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Tēnā koe. I rise to speak to the Southland District Council Stewart Island Rakiura Visitor Levy Empowering Bill. The Green Party supported this bill at its first reading, and we will support it at the second reading. And as the member for Invercargill and other members have noted, the bill will provide the Southland District Council with the legal basis to both receive and spend the revenue that it gains from a levy on visitors. And I understand that the bill has been needed because of case law that the District Council's powers under the Local Government Act are not unfettered, and that if the Southland District Council passed a bylaw to levy visitors without this bill, such a bylaw would risk being ultra vires if it was considered to be a tax, or the levy was. Rakiura Stewart Island is our southernmost settlement, permanent settlement, and the land of glowing skies. But those dramatic sunrises and sunsets and the natural wonders of Rakiura, including knee-deep mud on some of its tramping tracks, may attract visitors, but as we know, the rates revenue generated by its 400-odd residents is very small. And Southland District Council has a population of about 28,000 people, but its annual rates income in its 2010-11 budget is around $34 million. So as both the District Council and the Stewart Island Community Board and a number of individual residents have made clear in their submissions to the Select Committee, the island community lacks the ability to fund both the infrastructure and capital development projects which it believes are necessary to service the increasing number of visitors to the island since the National Park was established in 2002 and from the increasing number of cruise ships. And as both the Council and the Community Board have noted, the roading, maintenance and construction costs on the island are significantly higher than on the mainland because of shipping costs. And when I checked the Department of Conservation's visitor numbers going through their visitor centre, they had increased from 45,000 to 62,000 immediately after the National Park was created, and then settled to around 56,000 in 2005-2006. So while these numbers are significantly less than those visiting some of our longer established national parks, they are significant on the island. And the Southland District Council has described the situation as being akin to sharing a house with 3 people, but every weekend having to host 300 visitors with no way of recovering the infrastructure costs associated with their stay. And some of the projects needing investment include maintenance and replacing the jetty at Ulva Island, potentially replacing the diesel generators which provide power with alternative energy sources such as wind and solar, more toilets at road ends, and maintenance of the walking tracks outside the National Park. So while we're very pleased that a local solution has been developed here, and as the member for Invercargill noted, the bill's commentary does provide that it shouldn't be taken as a precedent for other local authorities, I can certainly see other councils, such as those on the West Coast, Westland, Buller and Grey, which also have very high visitor numbers and a low rating base, wanting a similar model there. And that's where I think the bill highlights a much wider national issue, the limited ability of councils with a small rating base to fund the infrastructure and amenities that are needed to ensure that visitors enjoy the experience and that we also sustain the qualities of the natural environment and natural assets that attracted people here in the first place. So, as other members have noted, these tourism taxes are used quite widely overseas. They take the form of entry fees, hotel bed taxes, or sometimes vehicle charges. Some of the Canadian states have a hotel room tax. In France, visitors have to pay a flat rate tourism tax. But when councils in New Zealand, such as Westland District Council, which from memory experimented with a tourism tax based on the number of toilet pans, there's been strong resistance to that. So I think we need to provide some more thought on some new tools and a consistent approach around New Zealand to how local authorities can ensure that visitors contribute to funding the facilities and infrastructure that they benefit from. And one suggestion in the past has been that there be a tourism levy on all visitors and that provide a contestable fund which local authorities could apply to. Mr Speaker, I'd like to acknowledge the work that the Local Government and Environment Select Committee did in the 49th Parliament and the quite substantial changes that it made to the bill, as the member for Te Taitonga has noted. And those included how visitors were defined, and was very pleased to see that visitors who spend all of their time within Rakiura National Park are defined as excluded visitors so that they're not subject to the levy. And this is particularly important because, of course, our conservation legislation safeguards free access to national parks and protected lands. And I think we need to acknowledge the enormous contribution which the Department of Conservation makes to both managing the national parks and providing quite substantial infrastructure for visitors in the form of walking tracks, campsites, roadside picnic areas, short walking tracks, and of course tramping and tracks and huts. And on Stewart Island we've got the 29-kilometre Rakiura tramping track and the 120-kilometre Northwest Circuit. Yet the Department of Conservation operates on an annual budget equivalent to the Hamilton City Council, and yet it has responsibility for a third of New Zealand and an extensive marine area. So the tactics being adopted by this government of slashing the department's budget by 54 million annually, of restructuring so that 104 odd staff positions were lost, are the wrong ones. We need to ensure that the department which manages the infrastructure for tourism in terms of those natural assets is properly funded, because of course 86% of Rakiura, Stewart Island, is conservation land, and the wonders of the Rakiura National Park, the opportunities it provides for tramping, hunting, fishing, walking along wild coasts, are what draws the visitors. And just as this bill is intended to help the Southland District Council adequately fund the jetty at Ulva Island, improved energy generation and other infrastructure to benefit both international and domestic visitors, we need to adequately invest in funding the Department of Conservation so it can sustain those natural assets. And anyone who's visited Ulva Island and watched kaka tearing the bark off trees knows what a special experience that is. So while, Mr Speaker, we support this bill, we'd also like to see increased funding for the department which protects those natural assets. Thank you.
Mr Speaker.
I call the Honourable Member Chris